It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome back to the Douglas Coleman Show, Zachary Hagen. Hello, Zach. Welcome back. Yeah, it rhymed.
Thank you so much.
I didn't mean it to rhyme.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We looked it up. The last time you were on the show was about a year and a half ago. It was April of 2022. So I assume since between then and now, you've been working on the fourth book of the Eternal Chronicles. Is that correct?
I have. The fourth book is coming out on the 12th of this next month, so we're excited for that.
December 12th?
Yes.
Okay. Give us a little refresher of what the series is about, just generally.
Yeah, so in the first book, Elior and his friends go on this quest to find a magical well that is supposed to be the answer to their various problems, but it ends up becoming a much bigger adventure as they encounter basically a deity in disguise, a djinn bent on world domination, and the political intrigue that comes with a multinational fantasy world. So there's a lot going on, and in the fourth book, we're just about finished. They are wrapping things up quickly, and there are prophecies to fulfill, and the big bad is even bigger and badder, and it's a wild ride. It's a great setup to the last book, which I'm now in the process of writing, now that the fourth book is done and ready to be released. It's an epic fantasy with lots of romance, religious tie-ins, and kind of the spiritual successor to the Chronicles of Narnia.
Okay. So your main characters are who, again?
Elior Barvadanya is the main character, and he's accompanied by a small cast of main characters with Nyx Cascada, Nereza Khan, and Opal Stronghand.
Where did you come up with these names? They're very interesting.
Yeah, so for Elior, his name, because I have a lot of multicultural tie-ins, so the prefix El in the Hebrew language usually has something to do with God. Usually, like we see Elisha, Elijah, they're prophets. A lot of them are chosen for something. So that was sort of the impetus for that. He's the main character. He has a job to accomplish in the world. And then his last name, Bar, means son, and then Vidanya departs from Hebrew, but it's related to the Spanish word vida, for life. So he's a chosen son of life.
Oh, all right.
Nyx Cascada, a Nyx is a water spirit, and Nyx is a merman that was initially cursed in the first book to live on land until he found something to heal him, and now he can go back and forth, but it's very watery, so it's very kind of on the nose for Nyx. Opal Stronghand, she was born a princess, so her family holds her kingdom strongly. Some of this is very on the nose, and if people are paying attention, they'll find it. And then all of the female dwarves in the books have names that are derived from gemstones, and so she's Opal.
Okay. How old is the main character?
Main character in the first book is about 20.
Oh, all right. Okay. So you said it was sort of a continuation of the Chronicles of Narnia? Because they would have got to about that age at the end of it, right?
Yeah, not so much a continuation as more of a spiritual successor in the likes of, if any of your listeners were video game fans back in the 90s, they might have seen something like Banjo-Kazooie, and then a spiritual successor would be something like Banjo and ukulele that they made, I think, in the last 10 years. So it's similar, but it's not a continuation of C.S. Lewis's world.
Okay, spiritual successor. That's an interesting term. Can you give us another example that might be rooted more in reality than in a fantasy world?
Oh, goodness.
I suppose it's difficult because
reality.
we're talking about spirituality in the first place, which is not necessarily rooted in reality. That could be debated, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a spiritual successor isn't necessarily referring to spirituality. It's more, these are similar things that address similar themes and ideas, but in slightly different ways. So if Chronicles of Narnia was its own genre, I would stick my books directly next to it on the shelf, if that makes sense.
Okay. So the comparison would be how? How is it similar to Narnia?
Okay. Yeah, so there's, like with Narnia, C.S. Lewis was a very devout Christian. He, in addition to his fantasy writings, had deep theological writings. Some people may know his books, The Great Divorce or Mere Christianity, very well. And like the Chronicles of Narnia, there are deep religious ties and symbols in my books. It basically traces the history of the Christian church from Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection to the final days of earth, according to the Bible.
Oh, okay. I've never read the books, the Chronicles of Narnia, but I have seen the films. How different is the books to the films?
It depends on which film and which book. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the most beloved of the 7 books of the Chronicles of Narnia, and I'd say that most adaptations have adapted it rather faithfully. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the BBC version, is probably a much better adaptation than the one that 20th Century Fox did. And Prince Caspian is kind of middle of the road, so they've gotten consistently worse as they go, but they start out pretty strong usually if they attempt the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
That tends to happen.
Because it's the most well known.
Yeah, I mean that tends to happen when they franchise something. The first one is usually great, and then it just sort of piddles out as it goes along. The one that I thought actually got better as it went along was Jurassic Park. Oddly enough, they seemed to get better as they went on. At least I thought so.
I think that if you get source material into the right hands in Hollywood, you can get a fantastic product. But, I mean, if you get it into the hands of a corporation that just wants to make money off of something that's already successful instead of because they love the story, then that's different. Well,
exactly. If it's coming from the corporate angle versus the artistic angle, that's been a big struggle for artists for centuries, I would think. But more recently, since the film industry and the music industry, they always want a follow-up album, and they don't care if the music is as good as the first one. They just want your name on it. I mean, I don't know. With this one, do you have any aspirations to get it made into film with yours?
Given the right offer, I would love to. I think, like J.K. Rowling, when she adapted the Harry Potter books, I would have very strict stipulations how that would be done, and I would absolutely need to retain some veto power over the script and direction, because the story needs to be the same. I don't care if they want to DEI the characters and make it a rainbow, because I don't really care what the races of the characters are. I don't think of them in any certain way when I'm writing them. But I would need the story to stay the same. I think that I would have to have some direct involvement with the process.
Okay.
Either that or just let me write the script, because I can do that. I've written plays and some screenplays before.
Does your characters start out in reality and then go into fantasy like in Narnia, or are they already there from the beginning?
Yeah, so it's more of a blend of reality and fantasy. Rather than being in a medieval kind of traditional fantasy setting, they're in a world that they've gone through a couple different, oh goodness, the term just fell out of my head. It's when Industrial Revolution. They've gone through a couple industrial revolutions, one of which was harnessing what they understand to be magic in their world as an energy. And so it's a realistic fantasy world in that everything has an air of magic to it, but there are lots of tie-ins with reality. Like the characters have cell phones, so.
Oh, okay. Do you know how many you're going to do in this series? Do you have a set number, or is it just until you've run out of ideas?
It is a set number for the main part of the series. So I am working on the 5th and final book of the main body of the series right now. And, if down the line there's demand for more of this world, then I have a few ideas that I could come back to and write some prequels and different things to expand the lore. But the story for Elior and his friends is wrapping up, and I'm excited to finish the 5th book and get that put out this next year.
Okay. Are you self-published, or do you have a publisher?
Sort of in the middle of that, because I own a small publishing house, and my publisher is my publishing house.
Oh, I see. Okay. You publish other people's work as well?
We're working on it. We have a children's book and some other people that we're pursuing. Of course, we have a relatively small budget, so for some authors it's a bigger risk to go with us, but it can also be a big payout too. So right now, it's just me, and we have one project that is in the works. We're just looking for an illustrator for that project.
Okay. Oh, that was one question that I was going to ask you was, did you have any interest in turning your Eternal Chronicles series into a graphic novel?
I think it would work fantastically as a graphic novel.
Because a lot of people seem to be...
the same reason I think that it would do well with film.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are kind of going that direction. I see more graphic novel series coming through for interviews where people, they originally wrote the books, and now it's almost like a transition where they wrote a whole series of novels, and then they turned it into graphic novels, and then the graphic novels they shop for film deal because they think that Hollywood won't sit down and read, 400 or 500 pages. But if you throw a comic book, a graphic novel in front of them where they can just flip through and they can actually visualize what this thing is going to look like, it's almost like making the storyboard for them. And it's giving a lot of people a kind of a leg up. I've known 2 that have gotten film deals simply by doing the graphic novels of their traditional novels.
Interesting. Well, I'll have to keep that in mind. If I find the right illustrator for it, I'm absolutely interested in doing that. I think that it's kind of a growing market, especially with the renaissance Marvel has had recently.
Yeah.
More and more people are interested in comics and graphic novels because seeing that it's not just some kitschy thing that the weirdos sit down and read. There are actually some fantastic stories in them.
Oh yeah, comic books are not for kids anymore. These things have turned into very complex, incredible pieces of literature, which they never would have been considered literature, before. The other thing you might want to think about too is that if you don't want to spend money on an illustrator, AI is getting really good. The last one that I did an interview with, he did the entire thing himself with AI, and it looked fantastic.
I will have to keep that in mind. I think AI has gotten pretty good, but I think it has a very hard time describing or generating if it's outside of the realm of reality. And when you're, like, I would need a lot of special effects.
Well, that's possible. I don't know.
And things like that.
Yeah, I don't know where it's up to.
But it's definitely an idea.
But his looked terrific. And, he had monsters and creatures and things in it. So it wasn't a sort of a 9-to-5 guy going to the office in New York type of a story. But I don't know. I'd have to get back to you on that one with the specifics. But, just something to consider. Anyways, we do have to wind this down, Zach. Thanks so much for coming on. So you said the book will be available December 12th it releases. Is that correct?
December 12th. It is up for pre-order as a hardback and as an ebook right now on Amazon. And the paperback will follow soon after that initial release date.
Okay. Last question. Do you have a website you want to give out?
I do. ZacharyHagenWrites.com.
ZacharyHagenWrites.com. Okay. Well, thanks for coming back on the show. Always nice talking to you. And best of luck with the book launch. Hope it does well.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.